Hi, it's Avalon here from Avalon by Nature, and welcome to our online discussion about Australian pagan books. And I will just take a moment here while I welcome you in, take a moment to join in. We won't get started for a couple of minutes, so you're welcome to, if you've come in, just grab a cuppa or a drink or a snack or something, or pen and paper. But I look forward to sharing quite a bit with you, and I will then follow it up with an article with links to all of the books that I'm going to be talking about. Some of them I have with me. No, most of them I have with me. There are a couple that I'm out of, so I'll be showing you digital copies or a printout copy of the front page. and then I'll follow it up with an article that talks, that provides all the links to where you can find these books, or in the case of one of them, the contact for the author, because she's now publishing it in a different format. Yeah, so as you know, I'm Jo. I do sell a lot of crystals, so normally you might see me on here, an online crystal sale, and we've got lots of beautiful treasures, and we did that last Sunday. But this Sunday I really wanted to just have a discussion about why it's important to why it's useful to your spiritual or pagan practice to devour, to dip into, to reference, to learn about others' experiences of translating what is essentially a Northern Hemisphere spiritual practice, primarily European, British Isles spiritual practice, into a land that, oh hi Cherie, how you going? Into a land that is in the Southern Hemisphere, is made up of many countries, all who have their own, all the inhabitants have their own spiritual practices, with commonalities across them, but their own terms, their own words, their own stories. I'm coming to you from Awabakal Country, which is Lake Macquarie in the east coast of New South Wales. And the authors I'm going to be sharing today, oh, you haven't missed much at all, Cherie. I've just started because there's nothing worse than rewatching something and it's like 5 minutes of doing this, right? So I'm happy to re-say what I've just said now, so don't hop off and rewatch. Essentially, today's discussion is about why it's useful and awesome, why it's useful and, in my view, necessary, but I'm not a dictator, so you guys do what you like. But why I specialise in making sure I always have copies of pagan books that are written from an Australian perspective. And it's primarily because as I was just saying, just as you came in, that the paganism practices, and there are many and varied practices, but primarily they have originated in the Northern Hemisphere, primarily in the Western world, so, Europe, British Isles, Scandinavia, all those sort of, the Western Europe or Eastern European even countries. And many practitioners have struggled with translating what is natural, normal order of things in the Northern Hemisphere into a Southern Hemisphere arrangement of seasons, which is not just a straight swap. Anyone who has done any sort of practice throughout a year has had to struggle, or has had to really wrestle with this idea of, well, this is what it says in the book. How am I going to work it here in Australia, either on the East Coast, the West Coast, the North, the South? We all have very similar issues around transplanting, and that's basically what we're doing, is we're transplanting a spirituality from another place into the place that we are in now. And so the authors I'm going to share with you, and Cherie, you'll know a lot of them because we've talked about these for a long time, but it's just nice to be able to have it in one place where I can share it. And then I will be following it up with I'll do an article that will have links to all of the books and authors that I'm going to refer to today. So don't panic if you don't have a pen and paper. But also I do want to open this up. So if you have any books that you've found useful that are Australian written, Australian focused pagan books, and I don't mean just Wicca or just witchcraft, I mean a pagan. So by the term pagan I mean an earth focused or earth based spirituality. And like I said before, I'm not a dictator, I'm not dogmatic, I have no particular bent at all. My focus is supporting Australian authors, promoting Australian authors, because I think Australian authors have a unique perspective that we need to get out more. So that is my focus, and I'm happy to share what what my readers, what you guys have used, have experienced, have found useful. So please, when you come along, do feel free to say hello, because I do love to know who's here. I can see up in the top here little icons, and if I know you well and I recognize your profile picture, I will try and say hello, but if I don't, it's because I don't quite recognize the profile picture and it's too small and I can't see it. So please come and say hello. I do want this to be as best as possible, backwards and forwards, without it being a Zoom meeting. And and also rest assured, you're not staring at me the whole time. I will be turning the camera around so we can actually look at the books not back to front. So I guess I wanted to start with not my journey specifically, but when I first started exploring a pagan path, it was in the early 2000s. I was involved with the Pagan Awareness Network of Australia, and that is a network that advocates and supports pagans' activities. It puts on some pagan activities. It is located in Sydney, but it is Australia-wide. And I'll put a link to that as well, because that's run by a volunteer committee, and it is it's a fabulous non-government, non-profit organisation that is supported by members. Avalon by nature is a member. It has been on and off for many years. And so, yeah, so I started my pagan exploration. Oh, okay, Cherie. Well, I'm glad you popped in, and I'll catch you later on. I love you too. Pagan Awareness Network. So, yeah, I went to a lot of events and some of the big Magic Happens festivals that they used to put on, and that's where I started to really get an idea or an understanding that an Australian perspective is really important to focus on. And so the first book I'm going to show you, I'm just going to turn you around. Yay, I'm gone. This is called Practicing the Witch's Craft, Real Magic Under a Southern Sky. And I guess it was my introduction to the idea that that there was something special and something particular about an Australian or a Southern Hemisphere experience of the pagan or an earth-based spirituality. So Doug Ezzy is an academic. And so this one was actually, I thought I put a bookmark in there. This one was published in 2003. So it's quite, it's got quite a vintage on it, and it is a collection of, so it's an edited book. I mean, it's a, oh no, I don't know what the word is. It's a collection of chapters from lots of different authors. So Doug starts about what is a witch, and then Tim Hartridge is the founder and convener of the Witches Workshop, which is the Australian Witches Workshop. That has been going for, oh God, over 20 years. So if that's something on Facebook that you're interested in getting into, or exploring more of. They have some really interesting conversations there. People share articles. It's very interesting. And Tim also organises events in Sydney. So if you're from Sydney or you get to Sydney regularly, these are good events to get involved with. And so, you know, there's a discussion around different cycles, you know, pagan birth, the goddess, the witch and the woman, feminist spirituality. So there's because I was doing feminist studies as well, so there was this overlap between, you know, the feminism and the spirituality. Sabbats, so Caroline Tully is an academic and witch, and she talks about the Sabbats, so the different, as you know, the different stages of the year that are sacred. And so this really was the first book that introduced the concept of magic under a southern sky, or that the importance of insights and experience from a southern hemisphere. So that's that one. And it is still, I think it's still in print. It is by Allen and Unwin, or published by Allen and Unwin, and I will find a link. It's quite likely available through Booktopia or Amazon, but I will find a link for you. Now, this is an interesting and beautiful book, Pagan Cosmology, Reinventing Earth-Based Goddess Religion by Dr. Glenys Livingston. And she published this in 2005. I actually met Glenys at university. We went to the same university. She was much advanced on me. She was doing her PhD when I was just doing my undergrad. But this is actually the book that's from her thesis. She explored earth-based goddess religions and reinvented, you know, sort of bringing together, just want to show you this, 2005 that was published. Whoop. So the term Pagan expresses a reclaiming of the term pagan as meaning a person who dwells in country, and with Gaian spliced in, which expresses a renewed and contemporary understanding of that country. So what does dwelling in country mean? And the Gaian helps you to understand what that country actually means. Gaia is a name for humanity's habitat. It's an old but a new name. It's an idea that the earth is a living organism, and that we are one. We are not separated. There is nothing separating us from the earth, or that the earth is separated from the cosmos. And so it's a very detailed and well-referenced, extensively referenced book about earth-based goddess religion. So it's bringing the feminine, or the feminist, into seasonal ritual practice. The cosmos, female imagery for the sacred. And she situates this, losing my words. I get so excited about this. Basically, her context of this this work is that she's female and she's a white European transplanted to the southern hemisphere. And I think this is the concept that I've really embraced, or really, it's really helped inform why it's so important to talk about in an Australian experience of pagan earth-based religion. And it's about making sense of alienation from the origins of our spirituality, to place it and to be able to connect with the earth here and create a modern spiritual practice. Yeah. Okay, so the third book I wanted to share with you is called Call of the Southlands by Jeneth Tollan. Jeneth, at the time of writing this, resided on the Central Coast, and she published this in 2011, and it was basically my first book that really talked about the Sabbath gatherings and celebrations for the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, in this, she has myths. She's a musician as well, so she'd written myths, chants, ritual activities, meditations, reinterprets the Wheel of the Year from a neo-pagan, that's modern pagan perspective, balances new ideas with a specific southern hemisphere point of view, and places particular emphasis on the how-to of creating group rituals. So formats, she used to talk to me about it as being a launching pad. So you would launch, you could buy this book, you could read through it, you could use it as a a launching pad for creating your own. So again, she wasn't, and I think this is particular to authors here, is that I noticed this theme running through the books, is that none of the authors are saying this is how you must do it, because how can it? We're not living in the areas and the seasons where these practices were created. So use these as a launching pad for, inspiring your own creativity around how you would, create a circle. What plants would you be seeing as being indicative of a particular change of season in your particular area? We've talked about this before. Our country is so vast. Our country as a geological phenomenon is so vast, and there are many social countries across it that you can't possibly say, well, this is how you do it right across everywhere, right? So, Call of the Southlands, Jeneth wrote this in 2011. It's not available in this solid book form any longer, so I will find, you can find her on Facebook, and I'll put a link to her current business page now. She's actually broken it up into ebooks, on different topics within the book here. But this was a fabulous introduction, and I sold a lot of copies of those. Oh, I forgot to tell you that, hello and welcome. Glenys also created the meditations, so she's recorded the meditations that are based or contained in her in the book that I just showed you before. So there are 4 CDs, and they take you through preparing and the meditation for each of the celebrations that are found within her book. Okay, so introducing Lucy Cavendish's and Serene Keneally's Witchy Magic. This is one of 3 books that they co-authored. The other 2 are Mermaid and Fairy Magic, but I just wanted to focus on this one, Witchy Magic. I'm just going to move that back out of the way. It was published in 2012. In 2012, and it is an interesting. So it's a selection of interviews from different Australian witches, and then we've got pagan advocate David Garland. So he's the chair of the Pagan Awareness Network. Fiona Horn, Oberon Zell Ravenhaft, Susanna Budapest. So a lot of the people who have been involved in an older pagan scene, I suppose, for want of a better term, right off the top of my head. Frances is in there as well, Frances Billinghurst. So Suzanne, and what they've done is they've talked about witchy magic, what is a witch, what type of witch is witch, a bit of a history, the revival, a magical revival, and how to use magic now, casting and crafting of spells, which is a specialty of Lucy's. And Serene and Lucy are very much healers, environmentalists, intuitives, so they've sort of broken this down and talked about that in detail. Moon rituals, the Sabbats, so creating the magic of the seasons. Serene has a book of magical Sabbat recipes, and it's a substantial book, like the size of this book. It's substantial. So it's a lovely back and forth. So it's interviewing with people who have actually done the work and are writing from a particular perspective. And then, so here we go, there's Lucy and Serene now. And they've both gone on to write more books, and as you know, Lucy has published a lot of oracle decks, pagan and witchy focuses, and Serene has written some novels, and she's now just published her first oracle deck with Selena Finnick as well. So a beautiful, substantial and interesting read, as well as you know, a good text to refer to. So that's Witchy Magic. And I've just got to show this one. I was checking my bookshelves and realised, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. I actually don't have a copy of Frances Billinghurst's Dancing the Sacred Wheel. So I thought, well, I'll just have to show it to you on my website. So Dancing the Sacred Wheel came out in 2012, and in fact it was these were the two books I had, you know, Call of the Southlands and Dancing the Sacred Wheel. They were on my shelves all the time, and they'd fly off the shelves all the time, actually, because they were, you know, I hadn't found Lucy and Serene's yet, but that it was the, you know, three books. God, get my words right, Joe. 3 books that really talked about the Sabbats, the practices of the moon, the seasons, all of that. So, Dancing the Sacred Wheel, Frances Billinghurst. So what was different is that Frances is from South Australia. So she's working from a Southern Australia perspective, whereas the other authors that we've just talked about now are working from an Eastern Australia perspective. So Frances's book was published 2012. It's a journey through the Southern Sabbats. Don't worry if you can't read this, it is on the website. It's just for me to refer to. So she talks about the Wheel of the Year, which celebrates the journey through the seasons, and she draws on her own experience of following a traditional pagan spiritual path and creating ritual over the last 20 years in southern Central Australia. So she combines traditional pagan lore with personal experience, history with ritual, and developing an underlying relationship with her local environment. And she offers invaluable pointers as to how to incorporate localized elements into something that provides a traditional feel. So this is something that Frances has, that's a theme that runs through all of her books. We'll see a couple more here, but is that she has really worked hard at translating and bringing the traditional into the local, and how to actually do that. So a wonderful resource. Yeah, Frances Billinghurst. Okay. Magic. Now, this is a book that, this is called A Wiccan's Walk in Oz. It's by Rebecca Major and Kate Cameron, and they're from Queensland, southeast Queensland. And this was published in 2015, but it was only by chance that a customer told me about it. Gosh, since I've been here in the cubbyhole, actually. So in the last couple of years, I found out about it. So it's one of those, because they've self-published, actually. I think it's because it's self-published, so they've been sending it out themselves. It doesn't get the push that a book that goes through the distributor can do. Anyway, that is just the way it is. Perspectives from the Southern Hemisphere. So they specifically work with Wicca, walking gently and exploring the unique landscape around you. They write for either a beginner or an advanced practitioner. And this is on my website too, so don't worry if you can't read this. It is actually on the website. So they talk about A Wiccan's Walk in Oz will further your connection and individual journey, and acknowledging that living in the Southern Hemisphere as a Wiccan can be confusing. So they've worked, they've walked a Wiccan path for many, many years as solitary practitioners, and use their experience and research to create this guide to develop commitment and dedication to the Wiccan walk. So Wicca and its history, writing your own read, how do you design a ritual, quarters, directions, energies, preparation, sabbats and esbats, and moon magic. So all the terms that you, all of the concepts that you expect to find, but with a Southern Australia perspective. Yes, so that was 2015. They published that one. Okay, now we're just going to take a little, just going to make sure I do this right. Yes, a little sidestep, and it's not a sidestep at all. It's an introduction of another spiritual path, which is Druidry. And what Julie Brett here has done. Hello, please say hello when you come in. Welcome. So Julie Brett has, she is located in the Blue Mountains area of New South Wales. And she's written this book, Australian Druidry, Connecting with the Sacred Landscape. This one was published in 2017. So it's a supplementary to the study of Druidry and other nature-based spiritual paths as practiced in Australia, and discusses the difficulties in following a nature-based tradition in an environment very different from the place the tradition was created. So if you are following a Druid path, all of your correspondence work will be coming from England, because that is where the path, the tradition was created. And Julie has done that. And then she has, through, you know, she's a founder of Druids Down Under, spokesperson for Australian Druidry, teaching and running public rituals based on exploring the land through the traditions of Druidry since 2007. And her works influenced many forms of paganism through her work on the Wheel of the Year. So she's done a lot to work with understanding a tradition in a very different landscape. So she defines Australian Druidry, talks about connecting with nature, a year of 2 life cycles, rebirth, coastal Sydney Wheel of the Year, so again Eastern Australia, looking at different festivals relating to the different seasons. And of course our animals are different. So often, you know, you'll have spiritual symbolism of animals that we will never see because they don't live here, apart from the rabbit and the fox. But you know what I mean, right? Just work with me here. Yeah, so practicing Australian Druidry and this book has been a very welcomed. It's sold very well. People have been really interested in it, and it's been a great addition to the what's the word? The group. There's a better word for it, but the group of Australian authors contributing. Hi, Emily. How are you going? Contributing to the Australian landscape of spiritual authors. That did not make sense. Just scratch that. Okay, so introducing another new author, Jane Meredith, who I think is from Queensland or could be from New South Wales. I'm not entirely certain. But Jane has written, Aspecting Goddess, yes. Jane has written quite a few books. While she doesn't focus on paganism and the Esbats and the Wheel of the Year specifically, her focus is on reclaiming witchcraft, which is a tradition based in America, founded by Starhawk, and she's been heavily involved in the reclaiming tradition and has written a few books with that perspective, which is different to a Wiccan perspective or a modern witchcraft perspective. So Aspecting the Goddess is drawing down the divine feminine. This one was published in 2018. So she's writing about walking with the goddess, researching the goddess, dedications, presencing, enacting myths, aspecting the goddess, finding your own stories in a myth, and ritual basics. So I guess the ritual basics, oops, hang on a minute, are we out of focus? There we go. Ritual basics will help with locating any goddess worship within an Australian perspective. And she does have quite a few other books: Aphrodite's Magic, Journey to the Dark Goddess, Rituals of Celebration, Circle of Eight, Creating Magic for Your Place on Earth, and Magic of the Iron Pentacle with Gede Palmer. So a memoir, a workbook, and an exploration of 12 different goddess myths. Not necessarily with an Australian perspective stated or made specific, but she is an Australian author, and so that would just be running right through it anyway. So, Respecting the Goddess. The Art of Witch, that's the other one I don't have in stock at the moment, but I'm sure that... oh, hello. Roll back up. I'm sure that you've seen this. Oh, where are we? Come on, roll up to the top. Thank you. That's me. Hang on a minute. There we go. The Art of Witch. I'm sure you've seen this. I don't have a copy in stock. I sold the last ones the other week. But Fiona Horn is an Australian-born witch. She did write a number of witchcraft books when she was in her 20s. She's now in her 50s. And she was also a musician. She went over to work in the US, and she's not long returned. She's been back here for about 5 years or so, over in Western Australia. And since then, so The Art of Witch was published in 2019. So she has, since she's returned to Australia, written this book. And The Art of Witch moves beyond the bells, whistle, tools and potions, and enters a new wave of spiritual mastery for the modern age. She guides through what it means to be a witch and how to create real power from everyday witchcraft and rituals in order to live a sacred life. So she blends ancient principles and virtues with modern techniques, and sees this book as a manifesto for every woman who wants to get more from life and to make magic. So it's about making magic, using magic to create a life in a different way to following a tradition of seasonal celebration. And I'm sure that there are ways that you can blend those two together in your own unique way. So some of the topics in this book: get better at living a magical life, master the art of true transformation, perfect the craft of witches' resilience, finding strength within your own coven, and trust the magic inside you. Yeah, so that's Fiona Horn's The Art of Witch. There we go. Whoop. There we go. Oh, hello. This is too sensitive. There we go. The Art of Witch. You'll be pleased to know that's the last one we look at like that. All right. Okay, so we're back with Frances Billinghurst from South Australia. In 2020, she was busily writing a number of books, but she was being asked about Wicca for the Southern Hemisphere all the time. So she just put together this very small guide. It's a little book of Wicca, which is a guide for the Southern Hemisphere. And, so she says, an earth-centric belief system, Wicca has much to offer the world through its focus on balance and harmony, as well as the recognition of magical power that's inherent in the universe as well as within ourselves. So it's an introduction to practices of Wicca, what Wiccans believe, and what it actually means to be a Wiccan. It has some insight into philosophies and ethics contained within this earth-centric spiritual practice, and from a Southern Hemisphere perspective, which offers starting point for seekers learning about Wicca and what it's about to live, what it's about when you live in the Southern Hemisphere. So a great little introductory book. This one's only $15, and it would get you started. It really would just get you started in understanding some. It's got a glossary of terms as well. I reckon it would be fine for teens as an introduction, and then you could launch on to more in-depth books about Wicca or paganism in general. So that's a little book of Wicca. Secret Journey. Whoops. I've just realised too that the one that I showed you, which was the witchy magic one, Serene has also created a meditation CD to connect you to the magic of the earth, and this takes you through air, water, fire, earth, moon, sun and stars meditation tracks as well. A good companion to the witchy magic, or one that you could use by itself. Encountering the Dark. Okay, so in 2021, this was one of the books that, one of the two books that Frances was working on when she self-published this little book of Wicca. So she mainly publishes her books through Moon Books now, which is an imprint from Britain. Yes, Moon Books is from Britain. And they are really getting into, because Jane Meredith is being printed by them as well, published by them as well, really starting to embrace Australian authors, which is great. Okay, so Encountering the Dark Goddess, which is a journey into the shadow realms. And it actually came out at a really interesting time, 2021, where I think a lot of us were spending a bit of time thinking about the shadow parts of ourselves and how to bring them into the light so that we're able to, you know, reduce that separation between our outer and our inner worlds, right? So Encountering the Dark Goddess is a journey that guides you through what this challenging facet of the divine feminine, the Dark Goddess, is truly about, and encourages you to step through the veils into her hidden realm to explore 13 aspects of herself. And so, again, not specifically Southern Hemisphere, because there are goddesses from all around the world, but she explores the myths and the stories about each of the goddesses that she's presenting here, and how to work with them. And of course, all from a Southern Hemisphere perspective, which would, you know, be included in her personal encounters, the poems that she writes. So again, not specifically Southern Hemisphere focused, but from the perspective of. So that's Encountering the Dark Goddess. Now, 2021 was a prolific year for earth-based spiritual publishing. And this is a collection of perspectives on a history of Druidry in Australia. So it was interesting that that came out not long after the Australian Druidry book by Julie Brett. And this one is a collection edited by Sandra Greenhalgh and Elkie White, Queensland and I think Victoria. But they have been holding Druidry events around Australia for many years. And this is a collection of personal reflections on Druidry spirituality. Over 30 Australians, so there's contributions from over 30 Australians who have a lived experience of contemporary Druidry. Timelines of significant events, information of different groups and groves, results from the history project around themes and beliefs regarding modern day Druidry, an exploration of the history of fraternal Druid lodges in Australia, and also forwards and introductions by key figures in the Druidry world overseas. And, you know, this was self-published. It's very organic. It's beautiful. I love this book. I do love history. So I just sort of, it ticked all the boxes for me. It was Australian. It was different. It was historical. Macadamia Grove. I mean, it was just, oh, sorry, I know I'm flicking through because I can see this. Let's see. Druidry in Australia, personal experiences, the different assemblies. So their assemblies are like the gatherings. Druid groups, seed groups and groves, all through the different states. The history project, which I'm gathering they send out a a survey questionnaire and collated the responses, lodges, and a fabulous collection and history of Georgery in Australia. By no means a complete, it is just a history. I think it's great. Now, of course, as I said before, but for those who've joined us throughout, I will be writing an article, like a blog post, with the links to all of these books that I'm going to be showing you. So, and of course, if there's anything that you've read, please, with an Australian pagan focus or Australian earth-based religion, spirituality focus, I'd love to hear about it, because I'm sure I've missed some. These are the ones I've come across. Yes, so Living Witchery is the first of a series of books. This one's by Alexandra Tannett, and she explores from novice to high priestess in a contemporary witch coven. So this is an account of what it's really like to be a member of a witch coven. It was published in 2021. She talks about how she joined a coven, the complexity of working with other witches, how she became a high priestess and what was involved in that. It's a memoir. So, it's a memoir of Alexandra's experiences. It talked about politics. It's quite funny through it. It talks about women's only spaces, initiations, the year that things fell apart, and just everything that you might want to know about a coven without actually having to join one. But if you were joining a coven, it would give you an insight into what to expect, or to anticipate how covens actually work. So it's very good read. So that's Coven. And Alexandra also teamed up with Kim Fairminer and Sandra Greenhalgh again to write this beginner witch guide in the Living Witchery series. And that was published also later in 2021. So exploring modern witchcraft with an Australian focus. It's perfect for new witches and those seeking to consolidate their existing knowledge based on time-tested traditions. It includes a broad range of topics essential for the beginner witch. Let's have a look at the... And there's heaps, there's a lot here. Forming, the fundamentals, the foundations, building your practice, the bits and pieces, the witch's tools, the rituals, the wheel of the year, the deities, connecting with a patron deity, witchery lore, so sky yarning. So we've got Indigenous astronomy. We've got articles from different practitioners around ideas and ideas that perpetuate through it. When somebody says to you, oh, you have to do it this way and this is the only way or else the world will blow up. Well, looking at some of those ideas, rituals and ceremonies, magic and spell work, and the traditions of this particular coven, their circle coven, how they actually work. It's a magical... It is a combination of wisdom from a variety of authors with an Australian perspective, and it's a really great read as well. So that's Living Witchery. We've got a few more. We're doing well. Okay, so this is the second of the books that Frances Billinghurst was working on. This is Contemporary Witchcraft, Fundamental Practices for a Magical Life, and this was also published in 2021. So it's basically what the little book of Wicca is the summary or an introductory summary of this particular book itself. So and it's interesting because Frances is very much a traditionalist, but she's had to work and tweak that traditionalism into an Australian perspective. And, you know, she works very hard at doing that and then articulating it so that others can understand it. And so, you know, her introduction at the back here, there are an abundance of approaches to witchcraft and modern Wicca today, with many encouraging an anything goes approach, opposed to what Gerald Gardner, the founder of modern witchcraft, set out. Contemporary witchcraft, foundational practice for a magical life, offers an alternative for the seeker who wishes to gain a deeper understanding of a more traditional approach to the craft. By tapping into the essence of the teachings handed down by Gardner and later Alex Sanders, this book provides the reader with invaluable tools and techniques that will enable them to set a foundation upon which to build their ongoing magical and spiritual practice. And regardless of whether the seeker is interested in joining Coven or not, it's about dedication and devotion in order for the greater mysteries to be revealed. This book offers an insight into how the non-initiate can achieve this in their own practices. So giving a history of modern witchcraft, the practices, so the practicals, journaling, meditation, magical power, magical circle, the elements, working tools, explaining what a ritual is and how to create it, and the different working with the moons and herbs. So all the things you would expect to find in, say, a Scott Cunningham book is actually presented here in a Frances Billinghurst book. So I'd really recommend that if you are wanting a really good grounding in the Wiccan practices of witchcraft. So that's contemporary witchcraft. Okay. So this is Becoming the Witch, The Art of Magic, and this is written by Danae Moon Thorpe. It turns out that this was actually published in 2021 as well, and it's published by Llewellyn. But I only discovered it this year. So for me, it's like, woohoo, this is a new book. Okay, so Danae Moon Thorpe is actually the founder of Spellbox in Melbourne. So here we have an author whose practice is based in, I know it's beautiful, isn't it? His practice is based in the southeastern region of Australia. Embracing the art of magic and the power that has always been inside of you. So providing a unique look at what witchcraft means in the 21st century, this book empowers you to become a divine weaver of life, be at one with nature's heartbeat and connect to all things. With practical guidance and poetic encouragement, the author teaches you what every witch must know, including the elements, spells, tools, deities, rituals, and more. So she explains the witchcraft in clear and creative way, learning to imbue every action, word, and ingredient of a spell with powerful energy, exploring divine realms, history of magic, and finding spiritual fulfillment in ordinary life. It's not just a key to holding a wand, but turning that wand into an extension of yourself. So I was excited to read that. It's a substantial size book, you can see here. So the story, the divine realms, the magic spell, the circle, the elements, and the witch's altar. So she talks about the different elements, the purpose of the witch, the tools, the shapes, so everything. Again, everything that you might need to know about how to get started, the different elements. They're just great. We've got imagery as well, the different symbols. You'll see some of these symbols everywhere. All right, so that is Becoming the Witch, The Art of Magic. My pile is getting smaller on one side and bigger on the other. Okay, we've got 2 to go. So this one is Belonging to the Earth, Nature, Spirituality in a Changing World. So Julie Brett is back again. She's published this in 2022, again by Moon Books as part of their Earth Spirit series. And she's done this a little differently. She's also brought together chapters from other people as well. So it's a collection of personal insights, stories of journeys and rituals, community events, and conversations between activists, First Nations community leaders, and those practicing nature spirituality. Thoughtful and personal perspectives about connecting with the land, paying respect to ancestral traditions, Indigenous cultures, and First Nations people, finding ways to practice nature spirituality with integrity. And each part of the journey of the book explores how we can all come together to work for a better future and to develop a greater understanding of how we belong to the earth. And it's all focused about connecting with and belonging to the earth, but it is absolutely front and centre. Julie is not an Indigenous person. She's originally from the British Isles, UK. But she's made it her practice to front and centre connection with Indigenous cultures and learning, and as we connect with the earth and with the country around us. So this one, beautiful. So Belonging to the Earth, Nature, Spirituality in a Changing World by Julie Brett. That one. Okay. And the last one I'm going to show you today is Frances's most recent book. You may have seen me talk about it, about actually meeting her for the first time in Adelaide last month. God, was it last month already? So this is On Her Silver Rays, which is a guide to the moon, myth and magic, published this year. So the moon and witchcraft go hand in hand. Lady Luna has long been both a guide and a companion, a sign by which we mark time, and all the while she gently aids us in our explorations into the self and magical workings. She is a reflection of not only the sun's light, but also the endless cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. It's a collection of science, myth, poetry, and ritual, and will guide you through working with the different phases of the moon in order to gain a better sense of well-being. And the cycles of change, so all the different cycles of the moon, the waxing and the waning moons, the full moon, the dark moon, the phenomenon of different moons, moon magic, lunar correspondences, and other things relating to the moon. And, a beautiful resource. Stories, science, a really well researched and put together book by Frances. So that's On Her Silver Rays. And that is the last book for today. I'm just going to turn this around. Hope that I'm okay. Yeah. So that, I hope, was I don't know how interesting that was, in terms of its presentation, but I hope that you got some idea of some of the fabulous titles that are out there. Please share any others or any other authors that you have come across that focus on Australian spirituality. I know there are a couple of others. I know of a couple more, but off the top of my head, I can't draw them in just yet. And that way I can add them to the article that I'm going to write about, or the blog post I'm going to write about the books, and the links that you can find them. Some of them, I know, Emily. Now you know how big my reading list is. And I think too, the good thing is, some of them longer than I am tall, absolutely. If I lay down, it'll be longer than that. Actually, one of my friends shared this meme the other day. It was a picture, and it quoted Marie Kondo, who said, it's best to not have more than 30 books in your collection. And of course, this is hilarious because Lilichi's house is completely full of books. I know I have a pretty extensive book collection here and at home, and I just laughed and said, "Oh, you mean 30 books by the bedside?" We're not even talking about the shelves. Someone else said, what, 30 books per shelf? So I think it's safe to say that those of us who gather in the corners here, the corners of the internet here, are never giving up their books. And there's no idea, no concept that having fewer than 30 books is even a thing, let alone a possibility, or ever going to be a reality. But anyway, so this is a selection that I have here, or have access to, that I've shared with you. I hope that there's something in there that sparks your interest, that you can follow up more, especially if you've been seeking, looking to find Australian specific, or buying books that look amazing and are amazing, and then going, oh, how do I make this relevant to where I actually live right now? And that is the purpose of today's video. All right, well, thank you very much. If there's anything you'd like to share before I close off, so that I can save this to share around and get writing on this article, please share it now. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming along. And I will have a think about what we might do in a couple of weeks' time. I know you're most welcome. Thank you for coming in. And I'll have a think about what we might share next time. Maybe I might do a focus on maybe goddess, because there were a few there. There might be some others there. I'm not sure. I'll find another topic that we can focus on. Okay, well, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will talk to you again soon. See you. Bye.